I wanted to show you guys this wonderful block that I came up with. Usually I tend to make blocks that are triangle or squares, perfect squares. You know, the measurement has to be perfect, and I wanted to try something different with my wonderful superhero madness that I'm into. I added my strips. I cut them into half square triangles or triangles. So now what I'm doing is I added them together and I made this beautiful rectangle block. And so I want to teach you on how to make that. All right, here we are. So here's the block. It's a rectangle superhero block. I put a lot of reds on this one around the frame, and I have all my triangle pieces that I did in a tutorial before. And so this is just kind of like an addition to, I'm adding to each skill to make something totally different. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the block together, and what I recommend is you roll one piece over and that you pin. And I'm going to pin this area, and here's this one, and you pin, and I'm going to fold this over, and I'm going to roll this and pin to this edge, and remember, in the direction of the pin is where we sew, and I'm going to roll this over and pin. So we have we have 4 pieces to sew. 1, 2, 3, 4 areas to sew. And so let's go to the sewing machine. One there, one there. We have 3 seams, I'm sorry. And we're gonna go ahead and pin it. And we're gonna have these pieces. I think I got it there, you can see it. Sew these pieces, rub them together, and then roll it right there to make sure you have it straight. We're going to do it on all 3 sections so that it looks like you have a clean, straight seam line from color variation to color variation. So there's another one. I'm going to pin on the thread line. There's my thread line pin. If you do this, so this needs to be, you don't have to worry about it when you're sewing when you have it pinned. So here I'm rubbing it together. I folded it over so they're on opposite, and I'm going to look over and you see it, a straight line right there. And then we're going to go ahead, or I'm pinning. There is a way to where you'll get so good at this that you don't have to pin and you'll have a consistent straight line seam, but I think doing this is a lot easier than having to unstitch. So now we're going to the sewing machine and we're going to start working. Now I have my pins far enough to where I don't have to move them when I'm sewing, but you can also stop. Make sure this fabric is straight in line and that you're on your fourth. Keep going. And we're cutting. So now I'm moving this. I'm taking off all my pins. And let's see if I did it right. And here's this perfect straight seam. This seam that's connected, and there's that seam that's connected. I have my pinned areas here and I have them connected, and I recommend that you go back, and this is really easy because you're just sewing it to the pattern. You go to the edge of one of the corners, like I'm on the edge of this corner, and I'm going to sew all the way straight. I'm going to roll it over so I don't have to worry about the seams on the back, and I'm just going to go back and just sew a beautiful straight 4 seam. Now this is going to also happen on the opposite direction. So I'm going to pull this over, make my 90-degree, make sure I'm straight, and I'm going to roll it over to the back so I'm not fiddling with these seams, and just sew a straight seam. Just like that. And so there I am. You want these little hanging tails. It's going to be cut off later. It's also going to be part of the seam So here I am, we're connecting the multicolor triangles. I want to make sure that my seams make a beautiful point or angle line. Make sure that the seams are snug up together again. And there's that line that you want, straight line all the way down. Then you pin. I'm going to roll this over again, see how it's off? We're going to snug it together. Snug it. Roll it and you see it perfect now, and then we pin. I'm going to rub this together. And it should feel flat. And there's that fold. And now we have it pinned. And now we're going to the machine and we're going to sew all the way through. So here I have my machine. I'm going to go ahead and sew. My needles should always be giving me that space, that forced space. So I don't have and if you don't understand what I'm saying, when I say give yourself that fourth space. So here I am. I pinned my needle in such a way that I have a fourth between here, the edge of my needle, to the edge of the fabric. And I know that if I go far enough back, it won't shift on me when I'm working on it, and I will not catch the needle when I'm sewing on the machine. My needle from the sewing machine will not hit the needle. Now the danger of that is you pop the needle on your machine and the fragment of the needle can go into your eye and can harm you, and it's just not good for your machine either. So make sure that you give yourself, when you're pinning, you're right to the edge of where your fourth line will be. And so here I'm going to open it and we're going to iron this one too. Here's that space that you wanted to have a perfect diagonal. Now having this extra fabric here, you can straighten it out with your ruler, so don't worry about that. So here I have my fabric and I'm going to rub it to the edge and have this fabric fold in. And here's my iron. I'm going to fold this in and I'm going to kind of finger press it to the side that I want it to go. And I'm going to press that. And so that is nice and pressed. So now, here's my pieces. I'm going to finger press towards the dark. Finger press it. You rub it. Do not move this fabric too much because it is on the bias and it can shift on you. So just press. And here's my other piece, and I'm going to press towards the dark. There we go. So here's my superhero block rectangle, and I'm going to put the pieces that we've sewed on here. So here's, this piece goes here. This is the center piece. And then this is the bottom part. The way I would do it is I would sew this area. I want to make sure this seam and this seam is perfectly straight. I hope you see that. So I'm going to roll it over and I'm going to connect that seam because that's the most important seam because that's part of the block. Now, you see all these little areas here? They also need to be connected. This is one of the best blocks to learn how to get your seams, to practice on getting all those seams connected and straight, and making interlocking. One more. I don't know if you see it, that they interlock each other. Rub, roll over, and there's your straight line, and pin. Up. And then now we're going to go ahead and just sew. Now here you don't have to interlock anything because it's just going to be a straight stitch. So here I am on the sewing machine, and I'm going to go ahead and sew all the way down. and do a straight seam. Now because I've pinned everything, I don't have to worry about it shifting. I know, let me roll this up. All I have to concern myself is that I keep a straight seam line. Now remember this extra fabric here, you're just going to hold this extra tail, make sure you're straight and keep going. Now, I'm going to take all my pins off that I had. I'm going to open this up and make sure that every single there. Now this is where it looks cool. Here. And then it's all straight. So let's iron and let's do the next one. So now I have pretty much a lot of the block done. Now I'm going to connect this piece to this piece. Now, before we made sure that this interlocked perfectly, so we're going to do the same thing again. And we're going to make sure it's perfectly interlocked because that's what makes it that really neat visual right here. So now we have all these little seams to reconnect, and I think I've already done it, showed it to you, so I'm going to go ahead and do it and then go sew it. Bye. So here I am, I've just sewn all these pieces, and I want you to see how beautiful each, I guess right here, all these connections are. I'm going to iron it. I'm going to rub my fabric for it to go in one direction. Make sure in the back it's nice and clean. So this is my superhero rectangle block. I think it's going to look lovely with when I start piecing different elements of this block together. I think it's just going to look awesome when this quilt is done. Have a great day.